Welcome to my channel, Trevkin. Before I begin, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe and consider supporting me if you like this content. I've also linked the article that I'm reading from down below so that you can read along with me and check out all the sources if you like. So, the title of the article is Fascist Propaganda, Russian Interference, Voter Suppression and Gamergate 2.0. In the run-up to the 2016 US presidential elections, what has now become known as Gamergate was an alt-right plan to infiltrate video game subculture using misogynistic, anti-SJW, anti-woke influencers to spread fascist propaganda and basically help elect Donald Trump. That's pretty much well known nowadays. YouTube was absolutely flooded with compilations, cringe SJW feminists, activists, just to project anything left-wing as being silly or uncool. And it worked big time. During that time, there was also a massive shift on other content, stuff like Alex Jones, towards massively right-wing racist and blatantly anti-Semitic stuff, basically. Even the crazy stuff like Mandela Effect, the Flat Earthers had overt or subtle racist dog whistles. Going deeper down that YouTube rabbit hole would lead you to things like QAnon and conspiracies about Hillary Clinton being remote controlled by Michelle Obama being a man. I'm sure you've all come across them at some point. That was quite a meme. One tactic, and still is, according to Anonymous, the @Uranon Central, which seems to be the most trustworthy version of Anonymous or crowd of Anonymous. They targeted vulnerable individuals, which is completely obvious looking at those videos from Mandela Effect, ranging from mentally ill to cognitive deficient, drug addicts, emotionally impaired and former victims of abuse themselves, to obfuscate the truth about Trump's link to organised crime and his own Epstein scandal. But another less talked about tactic was to harvest dejected Bernie Sanders fans using influencers such as Tim Pool, the Amazing Atheist and Thunderfoot, who are people who are susceptible to anti-SJW content, to either vote for Trump or just to not vote at all, which has the same effects for all intents and purposes, especially in swing states, and often leading them to much more toxic or flat-out fascist stuff like race realism, white nationalism. They dress it up as civic nationalism, but that's not civic nationalism. Civic nationalism is what people have in Scotland, where they welcome all people and they're proud of it, or they're proud of the positive achievements, like me. Cult of Dusty, who was another skeptic in the in that community, now live streams and tweets openly that he was part of that same group who were grifting to try and bring people, dejected Bernie voters, over to the alt-right, or just to not vote. And fair play to him, he probably would make more money doing that still, like Tim Pool, and he doesn't. So big up to Cult of Dusty. Cult of Dusty. I think he should change his name. Call of Dusty sounds cooler. Anyway, in the 2020 elections, what we're seeing is the same thing happening again, but with new characters and slightly more advanced tactics. There appear to be two main areas of propaganda that it's coming from. It's coming from corporate America, like people like Peter Thiel, and also Russian GRU agents. Yeah, if you think this is just Russiagate nonsense, then you've been had, I'm afraid, because there's a lot of truth to it. You've been ignoring geopolitics. I was guilty of it. I fell for it myself as well. I thought Russiagate was a complete hoax as well, or at least I thought I still do think it's massively overplayed, but it's definitely true. There's so much evidence that you are a madman if you're denying that at this point. Um, so yeah, these two forms of propaganda, these two alignments of interest, they don't agree on everything, but they agree enough to work together. And I've seen it myself in Discord servers, and I've seen people admit to it. And there's just so much evidence right now that it's like an open secret that only idiots are denying it, basically. So on the one side, you've got people like Russia Today, Caleb Moppin, and grey zone types hostile to the internet, to the Intercept, and to Anonymous, to the Uranon Central, or anyone that's actually got any brains. These guys are the biggest denialists of Russian interference, and they've got a completely class reductionist take of left-wing socialism. It's always the authoritarian, statist type tankies, basically. And then on the other side, you've got the Neoreactionaries. Fascist Beware did a great video on Neoreactionaries, which you should check out, which I've linked in the article. I'll also link down below. And they push the intellectual dark web, things like that, stuff like Jordan Peterson stuff. And they're also very class reductionist. It's a form of leftism, TM, where it's just aesthetic, and their content conveniently aligns with Steve Bannon's vision of the populist left, which he patronisingly describes as the little guy. Cunt. I might cut that out. A nicely manageable group of people who don't see race, but only want to end capitalism. Yeah, besides having only a basic Marxist analysis, they don't support any revolutionary movements or liberatory movements such as Black Lives Matter, or even any anarchist direct action or self-autonomy. They just want people to be passive consumers of leftism, TM. It's strange that it's almost as if their business plans depend on there being no meaningful change. On top of that, they support the status quo blatantly by telling their audience not to vote, even in swing states. They'd rather have Trump. Let that sink in. One of the most telling things is that they deny Trump is a fascist, and they don't seem too bothered about another 4 years of Trump's fascist repression and climate destruction, where every bit of carbon output counts towards the survival or demise of our species. As I've said before, I've worked in the renewable industry during the Obama, Biden, Blair years, and I saw what happened to the industry during that time. My business went bust, my partner's business went bust. It set us back 10 years compared to Germany and China. People that tell you that that Biden's just the same are either delusional, or, to be fair, they might not quite understand how much Trump has rolled things back and changed the industry. But every morsel counts that we can stop ourselves going towards that tipping point. So it's not like I need to reason with someone who's got different interests to me. Everyone listening to this has the same interests. Survival. One example is Peter Coffin, among many, who started out grifting as the person who would kick himself in the balls. You have to watch that video. Go watch that video. I'm linking it down below. There's also some other really funny videos of it, or actually really quite sad ones, where he's been just a terrible person by the sounds of it. Not that I don't think people can change, but I really don't think he has. Back to the article, where he kicked himself in the balls to become famous. That is a very funny video. You should watch it. He also works as the voice of Falcon He's actually really good. I enjoy him as Falcon much more than I enjoy him as Peter Coffin. Although, yeah, I don't know. I'm not cancelling him for that. I'm not even cancelling him at all. I'm just giving you my feedback, my critique. Cancelling is bullshit. I'm sorry, I'm going off topic a little bit. He works as the voice for Falcon, one of the biggest YouTube gaming channels, and was employed by the alt-right racist Ian Miles Chong, who worked for Milo Yiannopoulos. How strange that, isn't it? And Tucker Carlson, the Daily Caller. Many of the influencers like Chapo Trap House. Oh God, I can't listen to that. I don't even know anything about them because I just can't even listen to them. So awful. Except for the one podcast with Alan Moore, which everyone should watch. The rest just don't watch. The rest of these dirtbag guys aren't explicitly class reductionist. In fact, they are often spectacularly try and fail to disprove otherwise in a bid to stay relevant at the moment, especially Peter, whilst at the same time doubling down on their message, and it's such a brain fart. But their overall message that they propagate is tailored to push them people in the direction of class reductionism, even going as far as belittling Black Lives Matter protests and achievements like painting, getting rid of statues, things that are gestures, yes, but gestures do help change culture, and he just completely denies that. But their overall message is tailored to propagate victimhood, white victimhood, basically. That's how it seems, and that's I fell for it a little bit myself. Not that I actually fell for it, but I thought that it was a safe space for people to come over from the right, but it was actually a place to siphon people off to the right. A completely horseshoe theory. Yeah, horseshoe theory is horseshoe fact. It seems. I completely went round denying that horseshoe theory was a thing for so long myself. Anyway, back to the article. Yeah, so belittling any achievements made by Black Lives Matter, just because corporations agree that racism is bad. And I saw a really funny meme the other day. It said, Libertarians shaking hands strongly with confused Breadtubers. Everything is the market. That was funny. I will link that down below. And also go follow that guy on Twitter as well, the guy that did that meme. He looks like good, or they, whoever it is. Right. So one of the most telling things about them is that they always deny that Trump is a fascist. They try to do some silly false equivalence that Biden or any other establishment person is just as bad, and they don't seem to be bothered about another 4 years of Trump's fascist repression. Have you seen what's going on in the streets right now? The people being pulled out of their cars, and just people walking down the street being harassed by private militia that Trump has started employing. This is fascism, people. This is fascism. You need to wake up. This is not normal. And people that don't call it out are lying, or they're grifting, or they're false opposition, I've got to say. And that's going off script a little bit. I don't mean to call them that. But even if they know that they are false opposition or not, they're being paid to only say a certain thing, and they know it. The only logical justification for denying it, or for saying, oh yeah, Trump's just as bad, is accelerationism, where capitalism becomes one big monopoly, indistinguishable from communism. For example, Amazon. You could say that is like, and it is, it's like just one big corporation controlling us. And if that is the future that you want, oh boy, that's so misled. That's Ancapistan that you're describing. And no, accelerationism is a meme. It's a right-wing fascist meme to confuse stupid people. Don't be a stupid person, because it's a dangerous fantasy at best. A much more likely scenario is global ecosystem collapse and fascist Mad Max style anarcho-capitalist dystopia where people are warring over arable land and resources. And if you disagree with any of these anti-liberal pro-inaction cult, they're a cult. The replies that you get from thousands and thousands of followers, from people like Sean even, which really surprised me because I like Sean. I like Sean's videos as well. I was really surprised about Peter Coffin as well, to be honest. I really enjoyed a lot of his videos. Other than liberalism sucks, which sucks much more than well, I don't know if it sucks more than liberalism, but this current version of liberalism, I've already explained that I think that he really does not understand liberalism, but that's a different article. I will continue with this, especially from the replies that you get from the people. Thousands of likes, and I've linked some examples down below. So it's a kind of gentle coercion where normies and liberals, just people that aren't into that internet subculture, can't point it and point it out and call it out because it's going on so underneath the surface. And then they're pulled deeper into private Discord channels. I've been there myself, where they're introduced to much more hateful communities, real Nazbols, who are basically fascists. I'm going to stop calling them Nazbols. They're fascists. They're fascists who want free healthcare, basically. And they're not going to get it because they're just upholding the status quo. So they either know they're fascists or they're idiots. So this is group coercion. What happens is, and I've seen this myself, I was an admin in Faraday Speaks server, where it was continuously bombarded with by fascists, and there is this theory that if you allow any space to be really free speech, or to try and be free speech, it will just be taken over by fascists. And that's quite true. You can't let free speech fundamentalists get what they want. That's ISIS. Free speech fundamentalists. We don't let people spread hate speech. And you don't have speech without consequences. It's a gentle coercion so that no one else can point to it. When you can harness people's alienation or hatred, as the alt-right does, as described by the political prisoner Jeremy Hammond, a primary goal of state corporate propaganda is to divide activists into groups of radicals, idealists, realists, and opportunists. This is a refinement on the millennia-old strategy of divide and conquer by Sun Tzu in his ancient book, The Art of War. So to be open to our fullest potential, we really need to not be divided and embrace all of those traits or characteristics. I don't get shoehorned into those character types that easily, and we should all resist being boxed in and controlled and being shoehorned. I'm a radical. I'm a human being with rights, and I will assert them. I'm an idealist. I have strong ideals about what I think is right and fair. I'm a realist, though. I know that things are just as likely to change as they are as to stay the same. But nothing changes unless you try. And I'm also an opportunist. If you don't pursue and look for opportunities to further your goals and the goals, your collective goals, the rest of it is absolutely pointless. Similarly, a Marxist critique of capitalism alone is not enough. Marxism sprang from the Enlightenment ideals, but it's still stuck in the hangover of religiosity. That's a good film. Go watch that. Although Bill Mayer's a douchebag, but it's still a good film. Still good arguments made. And similarly, a Marxist critique of capitalism alone isn't enough. Marxism sprang from Enlightenment ideals, but it's still stuck in the hangover of religiosity. It acted as a placeholder, as a narrative of life for people, and replaced religion with another set of false beliefs, I think. Like Marx's critique of capitalism. I mean, I like Marx's critique of capitalism, but it's only a criticism. Having only a criticism of class and wealth, but ignoring personal biases, which I'm working on an article about at the moment, and geopolitics will leave you impotent, rather, to make any real strides towards a more egalitarian world. It also leaves you people open to exploitation, the very alienation that Marx described, similar to how right-wing propagandists exploit people's alienation and direct it towards hatred. In fact, Marx's critique is just one quadrant of a SWOT analysis, which is kind of similar to how they try and divide activists, actually. A SWOT analysis is, if you imagine 4 quadrants with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are obvious. People don't often look at the opportunities and threats. And to have a grasp of anything, really. I mean, this is a business planning tool, but it's such a good tool for everyone to have, to use for anything in life, really. If you want to pursue anything, you should run a SWOT analysis on it. You desperately need the other 3. You can't just have, you can't just focus on the weaknesses of capitalism. You might be missing lots of tricks if you're just focusing on the weaknesses. And it's incomplete information about the world, and it leaves you open to manipulation. So I say run your own SWOT analysis. Don't rely on decades-old texts or grifters with no experience in economics, like a dogmatic religion. That's what I'm doing. I'm specialising in economics myself, and in fact I'm writing a book which does a SWOT analysis on the available economic systems, and some theoretical and hybrid ones I'm thinking about and also studying. Yeah, so by the way, if you want to get access to that book immediately, consider becoming a £5 or above, $5 above Patreon. And also join organisations that actually make a difference in the world. Detoxify yourself, try and do that from all of the coercion and hatred. And yeah, I know it can have a negative effect on you. I've been there myself, like I said, when I was a moderator on a fascist de-radicalisation server, and just from researching the pipelines, in fact, the dirtbags, it's coercive, because what they do is they use things that you will agree with, but they often don't. They often lead you to things that are either voter suppression or don't make sense. Things that if you couldn't argue in the court of public opinion, then if you really think about it, it's a cult. Like if you're trying to argue for all abolition of private property, which I've seen lots of leftists do, they're in a cult. You can't decommodify everything. That's not how life works. People will say, no, that's mine. At least that's mine. You can't just decommodify everything. I don't know, that seems like a lovely utopia where everyone shares everything and everything's decommodified. But that's a lie. People are selling you a lie. People are selling you a cult. They're selling you the Moonies, or the closest you could get to that actually would be the Puritans, or people that go and live off the land. Operation Voter Suppression. Hashtag OpStop Voter Suppression. Having researched the community for years via their Discord servers and via their Twitter followers and their characters, what is clear to me is that right now we're in the middle of Gamergate 2.0, with figures trying to make out like that cancellation is the next big thing, invoking the vampire castle to try and reject any criticism of people and calling them vampires or liberals or neoliberals, which as you'll see linked in the article, I've wrote a whole article myself explaining neoliberalism. So I'm definitely not a neoliberal. I was, and that's the article, is Confessions of a Neoliberal. I literally outsourced to private companies public services which should have stayed public. I learned something about economics, and I have to give back now, I think. And I've also started an operation called OpStop Voter Suppression. If you notice any of that, hashtag OpStop Voter Suppression, I've actually got it to start suggesting on Twitter now. I'm quite proud of that. And call that bullshit out, seriously. Tag it with OpStop Voter Suppression. If you see any kind of misinformation or really bad analysis that could be considered misinformation because it's voter suppression, and you will get, once you start noticing it, you'll get sensitive towards it. Tag it as an anarchist. I think it's everyone's responsibility to hold authority and power to account. Disinformation poisons democracy and it upholds fascist dictators. There's evidence of that throughout history and throughout the world right now. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for listening.